I have 70 years and beyond worth of stories to tell. I was born in 1950 in Greensboro, North Carolina. Today, the world is changing so fast. Everything is moving so quickly. I want to hang on to my stories. I want to share my stories of yesterday. I want to talk about my life today. And I want to share history the way I remember it. Welcome to 70 Years and Beyond. Welcome to 70 Years and Beyond. My name is Wambui Bahati. You know, the other day I was talking about me babysitting for my grandchildren, and it got me to thinking about my own babysitters. And I had to think about that thing for a little while because I don't remember having a babysitter. So I called my two younger brothers, I called my older sister, and I asked them who were our babysitters. And none of us could think of a babysitter. They said we never had a babysitter. Now, our closest relatives lived about 2.5 or 3 hours away, a 3-hour drive from where we lived in North Carolina. So we don't know. We just looked after each other. We just remember looking after each other. Now, my mother always worked. We recall her always working, and we recall my father always working. Now, we're thinking that perhaps my mother didn't work when my older sister was born, the firstborn, because we can't figure out who was taking care of her. So we're thinking that perhaps my mother started working as we got older and we were entering into a grade school, because we remember our mother sending us off to school, and then she would leave and go across the street to the bus stop and go across town to where she worked. And then my father worked always in the evenings at the post office. So my mother would work in the day, my father would work in the evening. So it was a good, crossover, but there was always a gap in there. We remember most days there was a gap between my mother getting home and my father leaving. There was no one there. And so we remember coming home and taking care of ourselves, even as very young children. Now, we had rules. The rules were nobody was allowed to come in the house, not especially other children, no adults, nobody was allowed in. In fact, we were not allowed to not only open the door if someone came to the door, we were not even allowed to go to the door. If someone rang the doorbell, knocked on the door, my mother and father told us, do not go to the door. Now, we were allowed to answer the phone because we didn't have cell phones and all that stuff like we have today, but parents still wanted to have the ability to reach their children if they needed to. So we were allowed to answer the phone, and in case it was our mother or our father. But we were not allowed to have a conversation with anyone. If someone called on the phone, and it was an adult especially, we were not to talk. If they asked to speak for your mother or your father, then you would do this. You would say, hello, and they'd say, can I speak to your mom or can I speak to your dad? And you say, hold on just a minute. Now, your mom or your dad is not there, but you'd wait a few beats because you wanted to make it seem like you went and actually talked to them. So then you come back and say, they're busy right now. They're going to call you back. And that was the routine. So you never talked to anybody, and you never said they weren't there. You just said they were busy and they were going to call whoever it was back. So the other rule was about clothes. So we had 3 sets of clothes. We had church clothes, school clothes, and play clothes. And the rule was right away when you came home from school, you switched out of your school clothes into your play clothes. And my mother would leave sandwiches and snacks for us. And by the time I believe I was as young as the 4th grade when she allowed me to make Jiffy Pop. And I loved Jiffy Pop. So my mother would have Jiffy Pop for me as my snack. And we didn't have a gas stove or anything like that. So there was no open flame, which is why I'm sure it was, much safer and pretty okay for me to use the electric stove to make my Jiffy Pop. I loved Jiffy Pop. And I don't know if they still make Jiffy Pop, but it looked like a fake frying pan. It was out of aluminum, and inside was the popcorn. It was flat, but then when you started popping it, it would pop, 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 and just make this great big bloom of this aluminum globe would happen, and then you'd peel back the aluminum, and there was the beautiful popcorn. Now, one of my best memories ever, one that I just treasure, is I have this memory of me making my Jiffy Pop, putting it in a bowl, getting my comic books, and if the weather was nice, I'd go out on our back porch and sit on the first step. Now, we had a porch that was high off the ground in the back, so there were a lot of steps, but I'd sit on that top step with my bowl of Jiffy Pop popcorn, and I had little Lulu, I had Nancy, and I had Richie Rich. Those were my three favorite comic books. And I just loved sitting out there thumbing through my comic books. Now, of course, we did have to do our homework. That was something, too. My mother was very strict about doing your homework. So we had to do that. That was another rule. And the other rule was that we were not to play in the living room. My mother said you can play in any other rooms, but you're not to play in the living room. Now, we had a very small house. We had a kitchen. Well, we had the living room. We had a kitchen that wasn't even big enough for a table to fit in. So it was just a cooking kitchen. And then we had what was supposed to be, I guess, the dining room. But that's where we ate. That was our table, was in that room. But it was also the catch-all room. It was the dining room. It was the den. It was the playroom. It was the TV room. It was the dancing and music room. And it eventually became a bedroom. So that was that room. And then we had 2 small bedrooms and a bathroom. And that was our house. So my mother's rule was you can play anywhere in the house, but not in the living room. She said, I want to keep my living room looking nice. So we understood that. We respected that. Now, as children, we just obeyed. We just tried to do right because I think we were afraid to push the envelope. Now, when we were younger, we would get spankings for stuff or, whatever. I always felt I did not deserve it, but my mother would spank me for doing or saying, or, she would spank us. But as we got older, my mother was not so much into spanking or hitting or anything like that, but she was a fusser. She was a fusser, and sometimes you wish that, okay, just spank me, just whatever, because she would fuss about a thing, not only all day, but sometimes take it over into the next day. It's like, I told you not to do that, and you did that, and so why didn't you listen to you? Never listened to me, and she would just go on forever and ever and ever and ever, and it was very painful to me to have to listen to that, especially when she would carry it over to the next day. Now, she was a fusser, but she also could do this thing where she could make you just feel so small and so guilty because let's say you broke something, or I don't know, you did. She would come at you with, you don't know how hard I work. I go to work every day trying to give y'all nice things. I try to give you nice things. I try to make you happy, and you just don't appreciate it. I don't know why I work so hard. I don't know why I even care, because y'all don't care. Y'all just tear up stuff, and I don't know why I work so hard. Okay, so that to me was worse than the just regular fussing. So I would have rather had the regular fussing, but actually besides the fussing, I would have just had a regular, I don't know, spanking, whatever she was going to do, because those things just drove me crazy. So as kids, we didn't know how far to push the envelope. So we kind of tiptoed. We weren't scared of our parents, but there was a bit of fear. A fear factor was involved in there in some way. Now, because in those days, a parent would just look at you. They look at you and say, hey, I brought you in this world, and I will take you out. Now, we didn't know what part of that may have been a joke, or what part of that was true, or if they would really act on that. Now, today, see, kids know they can call somebody on their parent. You know, they can call somebody and report their parent. We didn't know that. We report your parent? Are you kidding me? We didn't know anything about that. We knew they could call and report us, but we never knew there was such thing as we could report a parent. So we weren't sure. Now my mother, one time when I don't know what we had done, but she really lost control. And when she took her bedroom shoe and she threw it across the floor at us, and we were dodging and everything. So we always kind of tread lightly. We didn't want to push the envelope too far. And there was something called the look, too, where the look was horrible. The look was bad because they didn't even have to touch, they didn't even have to say anything. For instance, okay, so let's say I'm sitting in church and I'm beside my mother and I'm getting a little bit too fidgety or I'm whispering too much to everybody around me. My mother would take that elbow and then she would just turn and give me a look. And I swear you would see your life flash before your eyes when she gave you that look. Now, my brothers and my sisters say the same thing. It was something about the look. That look would just make you freeze. A parent didn't even have to say anything. They could give you the look. And you knew. Nobody had to say anything. You knew you better get in line when you got that look. So there was that. Now, I told you my mother said she'd like to keep her living room nice. She didn't want us playing in the living room. But you know, there's sometimes somebody would push somebody. Now you gotta push them back. And before you know it, it turns into this whole chase. So we're chasing each other through the house. Now we're not playing in the living room, but we are going through the living room. But we're not playing in the living room. We knew better than that. So we're going through the living room, and on our way through the living room on one of our chases, oh Lord, a lamp hits the floor. A lamp breaks on the floor. Now you got 4 kids standing around in the living room with a broke lamp on the floor. Can we fix it, we think? My sister said, oh, we can fix this. I'm going to fix it. Oh, we can fix this. So she does something. She can't fix it. So the best we can do is clean it up, put it in a bag, and just kind of put it on the side. Now we have a decision to make. There's a decision that I believe every child in the world has to make at some point. And that is, do we tell her or do we wait for her to find out? So we all made a pact that day. We said, you know what? Our mother's busy. She has 4 children. We don't want to say anything to disturb her tonight. She's got church activities, all these things. Maybe she won't notice right away. So we're not going to tell her. We're going to wait for her to discover it. But we're hoping and praying that she doesn't discover it. And so we make this pact that we're not going to tell her. And we're thinking that perhaps she won't notice. That'll give us time to maybe get big enough to get a job. And then we can replace the lamp. Or maybe she won't notice long enough for us to grow up and move out. But we're not going to tell her. We're just going to wait. We're not going to mention the lamp when she comes home. So we made that pact. Now, isn't there always that one sibling who their guilt gets, like they're the ones that paid attention in Sunday school and now their guilt gets to them. They just can't do what they think is wrong. So even though we had made a pact that we were not going to tell her, we were going to let her discover it. The minute we heard that key in the doorknob turned, my mother stepped a foot inside the house. My little brother ran to her and said, Mama, you know that lamp? The lamp is broke, Mama. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. And yes. We got the both treatments combined. We got the fussing and the guilt. We can't have nice things. Yeah, don't appreciate anything. Oh, and it went on for days and days and days and days. It was horrible. But yeah, we didn't have a babysitter. We looked after each other. And I think we all turned out quite quite good. I turned out quite good. 70 years and beyond. Wambui Bahati.